Luca Moretti stood frozen beside the towering iron gates of his estate, watching the woman he loved climb into a taxi with tears running silently down her face. She carried nothing except the same worn cleaning bag she had arrived with months earlier. Inside the mansion, Bruno, the giant Newfoundland who trusted almost no one, howled with heartbreaking desperation, scratching at the front door as if he already understood that the one person who had brought warmth back into their lives was leaving forever. Luca could command boardrooms. He could negotiate with dangerous men. He had survived betrayals that would have destroyed most people. Yet in that moment, the feared Mafia boss couldn't find the courage to say the only words that mattered. "Please, don't go." By the time he finally reached the driveway, the taxi had disappeared into Chicago's evening traffic. Only then did he discover the folded letter Emma had left beneath Bruno's favorite blanket. 5 handwritten words shattered every wall around his heart. "You taught me love again." But would the scars of 2 broken hearts allow them to find their way back to each other? Or had fate already stolen their only chance at happiness? Chicago woke before the sun. The skyline shimmered with polished towers of glass and steel, while expensive cars whispered along spotless streets toward meetings where fortunes changed hands before breakfast. From above, the city looked perfect. From the ground, it told another story. Only a few miles west, aging apartment buildings leaned against one another like exhausted workers finishing another impossible week. The sidewalks carried mothers rushing to second jobs, construction workers balancing paper cups of cheap coffee, older men searching newspaper boxes for temporary work. Dreams survived here, but only if they learned how to wait. Emma Brooks had become an expert at waiting for payday, waiting for another miracle, waiting for a future she no longer believed belonged to her. At 38, her alarm sounded every morning at 4:30, not because she enjoyed discipline, because exhaustion had become the price of survival. She lived in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment whose wallpaper had begun peeling years before she moved in. The kitchen faucet leaked. The heater complained through every winter. The bedroom window never completely closed against October winds. Still, Emma called it home. She quietly folded her blanket before making instant coffee that tasted more like warm water than comfort. On the refrigerator hung exactly 3 photographs. One showed her parents smiling beside a younger Emma wearing veterinary school scrubs. Another captured her father fishing years before the stroke changed everything. The last picture showed Bruno-sized rescue dogs surrounding Emma at a local shelter, every tail wagging as though they had discovered paradise. She smiled at that one every morning. Animals had never cared about money, only kindness. Perhaps that was why she loved them more than most people. She slipped into her faded housekeeping uniform, tied back her chestnut hair, and looked into the mirror. Fine lines had begun appearing beside her eyes. Not from age, from carrying too much for too long. "You've got this," she whispered, even when she didn't believe it. Years earlier, Emma Brooks had been one of the brightest students in her veterinary medicine program. Professors predicted she'd become a remarkable surgeon. Her classmates admired how frightened animals immediately relaxed around her. She never forced frightened creatures to trust her. She waited. She listened. She understood. Then came the phone call. Her father had collapsed at work. Massive stroke. Emergency surgery. Months of rehabilitation. Bills that climbed faster than hope. Emma didn't hesitate. She withdrew from university the following week. "We'll figure something out later," she told her parents with a smile. Her father cried harder than she had. "I'm stealing your future," he whispered. "No." She kissed his forehead. "You're my future." He passed away for years later, believing she had sacrificed too much. Emma never corrected him, because he was right. Love hadn't been kinder. For 7 years, Emma believed she'd found her forever. Daniel wasn't wealthy. Neither was she. They planned simple things. Weekend hikes, a small house, children, a rescue clinic, growing old together. Until one ordinary Tuesday, he ended everything over dinner. "I need stability." Emma frowned. We've always had stability. He couldn't meet her eyes. Not emotional stability. Financial stability. 3 months later, he married the daughter of a real estate developer whose wedding photographs filled magazines across Chicago. Emma accidentally saw them while cleaning an executive office. She stared for exactly 3 seconds, then quietly continued dusting the conference table. No tears. Not there. She cried later while bathing abandoned puppies at the shelter. Dogs never asked why humans broke each other's hearts. They simply loved anyway. Maybe they were wiser than people. By 6 each morning, Emma cleaned corporate offices downtown before executives arrived. She vacuumed floors no one thanked her for polishing. She emptied trash bins filled with half-finished expensive lunches. She wiped fingerprints from glass walls where million-dollar deals were signed. Invisible, efficient, forgettable, exactly how wealthy people preferred their housekeeping staff. Her second job began at 9. The elite domestic staffing agency assigned temporary housekeepers to Chicago's wealthiest families. Most clients barely remembered employees' names. Emma never minded. She wasn't there to be noticed. She was there because every paycheck helped pay for her mother's nursing home. Every extra shift covered another medical bill. Every exhausted evening bought another month of dignity for the woman who had sacrificed everything raising her. Love sometimes looked like flowers. Sometimes it looked like overtime. That afternoon, during lunch break, Emma stopped at the nursing home carrying homemade vegetable soup. Her mother, Margaret, smiled the moment she entered. "My beautiful girl." Emma kissed her forehead. "How are you today? I'll answer honestly if you promise not to lie." Emma laughed. "When have I ever lied? When you tell me you're not tired." Emma looked away. Margaret gently squeezed her daughter's hand. "You've spent your whole life rescuing everyone else." Emma smiled softly. "I learned from the best. But who rescues you?" Emma didn't answer, because she didn't know. Lake Michigan reflected autumn sunlight like scattered diamonds. High above the shoreline stood Moretti Manor. Elegant, massive, impenetrable. Reporters called Luca Moretti one of Chicago's most respected businessmen. The newspapers praised his charitable foundation, his technology investments, his scholarship programs, his redevelopment projects. Few people realized every respectable headline had been purchased with years of relentless redemption. His family name still whispered through Chicago's shadows. Moretti, once synonymous with fear, violence, power. Luca had spent 10 years tearing apart everything his father built. Not because it was easy, because someone finally had to stop the cycle. He closed illegal operations, turned criminal businesses into legitimate companies, protected employees caught between old loyalties and new beginnings. Enemies multiplied, friends disappeared. His younger brother died refusing to return to organized crime. His mother died believing the family curse would outlive them all. His fiancée left quietly after learning the truth. "You'll always belong to darkness." Those words echoed every night. Success never silenced them. Every evening ended exactly the same. Luca returned home, removed his suit jacket, poured black coffee, walked toward the library. Halfway there, a massive black Newfoundland bounded toward him. Bruno, 160 pounds of fur, scars, loyalty, and unconditional love. Luca knelt immediately. "There you are." Bruno rested his enormous head against Luca's shoulder. Neither cared about silence. It was enough simply being together. Years earlier, Luca had rescued Bruno from an abandoned warehouse connected to illegal dog fighting. The dog trusted no one, growled at every stranger, flinched whenever hands reached toward him. Luca recognized the look. It mirrored his own reflection. Broken things understood broken things. Eventually, neither feared the other anymore. They healed together, or as much as either believed possible. One chilly October morning, Bruno refused breakfast. By afternoon, painful sores spread beneath his thick coat. The veterinarian diagnosed an aggressive skin infection. "He'll recover," the doctor assured Luca, "but he'll need medicated baths every day, gentle handling, Constant observation. Commercial boarding wasn't an option. Bruno panicked around unfamiliar handlers. Luca wouldn't risk it. His longtime housekeeper, Mrs. Alvarez, offered a solution. The staffing agency employs one woman who's wonderful with animals. Luca barely looked up from Bruno's medical chart. Fine. She's somewhat clumsy. Silence. But incredibly kind. Luca sighed. Kindness matters more. Neither realized how prophetic those words would become. The following morning, Emma received an unexpected call. Her supervisor sounded unusually nervous. We have a temporary assignment. All right. The client is particular. Emma smiled. They usually are. This one owns one of the largest estates in Chicago. Emma nearly laughed. Then I definitely don't belong there. Just listen carefully. Her supervisor lowered her voice. Don't touch anything unless instructed. Understood. Don't ask personal questions. Of course. And please. A long pause followed. Don't make mistakes. Emma looked down at the coffee she'd already spilled across her own lunch bag. I'll certainly try. She hung up, then accidentally knocked her mop over. Rosa, her closest friend, burst into laughter. You know? Emma groaned. I'm aware. You have the biggest heart of anyone I've ever met. Rosa grinned. And absolutely no coordination. Emma laughed despite herself. Those two things don't usually come together. They do in you. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, a city bus stopped before towering black iron gates overlooking Lake Michigan. Emma adjusted the strap on her worn cleaning bag. Beyond those gates stood a world she'd only ever seen in magazines. She inhaled slowly. This is just another house. She didn't believe herself. The gates opened. Emma stepped forward, completely unaware that every lonely chapter of her life was about to change forever. Before we continue this unforgettable romance, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. These stories are carefully crafted to bring you emotional journeys filled with love, healing, second chances, and unforgettable happy endings. If you enjoy mature romance stories that stay with you long after they end, subscribe now. And now, do you believe true love can appear when you least expect it? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. The Moretti estate felt less like a home and more like a private museum. Every hallway gleamed beneath soft amber chandeliers. Italian marble reflected the afternoon sunlight. Oil paintings watched silently from carved wooden walls. Fresh lilies perfumed rooms larger than the apartment Emma rented. She instinctively slowed her steps. Not because anyone had told her to, because places like this always seemed to demand quiet. Mrs. Alvarez, the estate's longtime housekeeper, greeted her with a warm smile that instantly softened the intimidating atmosphere. You must be Emma. Emma nodded politely. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Alvarez chuckled. Please don't call me ma'am. It makes me feel ancient. Emma smiled. I'm sorry. You'll discover something about yourself before this day is over. Emma blinked. What is that? You apologize far too much. Emma looked genuinely confused. I do. Mrs. Alvarez laughed. You just apologized for apologizing. Emma covered her face in embarrassment. Oh, there it is again. Both women laughed together. For the first time since arriving. Emma relaxed. Mrs. Alvarez explained Bruno's treatment carefully. The medicated shampoo stays on his coat for 15 minutes. Emma nodded. The ointment follows afterward. She memorized every instruction. What if he refuses? Mrs. Alvarez smiled knowingly. He usually does. Emma looked toward the large oak doors leading deeper into the mansion. I'll be patient. That's why I asked for you. Emma frowned. You requested me? Mrs. Alvarez nodded. I've heard about the woman who volunteers at the rescue shelter every Thursday night. Emma looked surprised. It isn't much. It tells me everything. From the second-floor balcony, Luca Moretti quietly reviewed emails on his tablet. He had no intention of observing another temporary employee. Staff came and went constantly. Professional, polite, forgettable. He expected today's replacement to be no different. Then, A loud metallic crash echoed through the foyer. Luca looked up. An antique brass umbrella stand rolled dramatically across the marble floor before coming to rest beside a staircase. Emma froze. Oh no. She hurried toward it, kneeling immediately. I'm so sorry. She carefully examined the umbrella stand. I'm sorry if I frightened you. She actually said it. To the umbrella stand. Luca stared. Did she just apologize? To furniture? She gently polished away fingerprints before placing it exactly where it had stood. Then she stepped backward, accidentally bumped a decorative chair. I'm sorry. Another apology. Luca blinked. For reasons he couldn't explain, the corners of his mouth twitched. 5 minutes later, Emma carried fresh towels toward the guest wing. One of the estate's security guards rounded a corner unexpectedly. She gasped. The basket flew from her hands. Dozens of white towels floated across the polished hallway like oversized snowflakes. Emma closed her eyes. This is exactly why rich people hate hiring people like me. She knelt immediately, methodically folding every towel before placing it back inside the basket. Not stuffing them, folding them. Perfectly. She never noticed someone watching. Luca remained hidden behind the balcony railing. He expected frustration, complaints, excuses. Instead, she treated every towel as though someone had trusted her with something precious. There wasn't a trace of entitlement, only quiet dignity. Curious, very curious. Late that afternoon, Mrs. Alvarez finally brought Emma to Bruno's room. The enormous Newfoundland stood near a fireplace. His thick black coat looked dull beneath patches of irritated skin. The infection had stolen much of his usual energy. Yet despite his weakness, he remained magnificent. Emma stopped several feet away. She didn't smile immediately. She didn't rush toward him. She simply observed. Bruno observed her back. Silence filled the room. Mrs. Alvarez whispered, "Most people try too hard." Emma nodded almost imperceptibly. "I know." She slowly crouched onto one knee. Not too close. Not too far. "Hello, handsome." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "My name is Emma." Bruno remained motionless. "I've heard you've had a difficult week." No movement. "That's okay." She smiled softly. "You don't owe me trust." Another long pause. "You've already had enough people asking for things." Mrs. Alvarez watched with amazement. Emma wasn't talking to Bruno like a patient. She was talking to him, like someone who understood grief. Almost 2 full minutes passed. Neither woman moved. Finally, Bruno took one cautious step, then another, then another. His massive paws echoed softly across polished hardwood. Emma remained perfectly still. No pressure. One more step. The giant dog's nose gently brushed against her sleeve. Emma didn't immediately touch him. She allowed him to investigate. His breathing slowed. His ears relaxed. After another quiet moment, Bruno leaned his enormous head against Emma's shoulder. Mrs. Alvarez gasped softly. At that exact moment, someone appeared silently in the doorway. Luca. He had intended to ask whether Bruno had taken his medication. Instead, he witnessed something almost impossible. Bruno had rejected professional trainers, experienced veterinarians, animal behavior specialists. Yet this awkward maid, who apologized to umbrella stands, had earned his trust within minutes. Luca couldn't explain it. Neither could Mrs. Alvarez. Emma never even realized he was there. Bruno reluctantly followed Emma toward the bathing room. She turned, nearly collided with Luca. Oh! She stepped backward so quickly she almost lost her balance. "I'm terribly sorry." Luca instinctively reached forward. His hand steadied her elbow before she slipped. Their eyes met, only for a second, but something unexpectedly quiet settled between them. Emma immediately looked away. "I'm sorry. You've apologized 3 times in 10 seconds. She blinked. "I have. You've also done nothing wrong." She smiled nervously. "I tend to assume I have." Luca studied her expression. There wasn't manipulation there, only habit. Who had taught this woman she deserved blame before evidence? Luca." She nearly dropped the shampoo bottle. She knew exactly who he was. Every newspaper in Chicago carried his photograph. She lowered her eyes respectfully. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Moretti." His voice remained calm. "Luca." She hesitated. "I don't think that's appropriate." Neither is apologizing for existing. For the first time, Emma laughed. It wasn't polished or practiced. It escaped before she could stop it. The sound surprised both of them, especially Luca. He couldn't remember the last time laughter echoed naturally inside his home. The oversized bathing room had clearly been renovated specifically for large dogs. Emma carefully adjusted the water temperature. "Let's make this as painless as possible." Bruno reluctantly stepped inside. She rolled up her sleeves. Within seconds, soap covered everything. Bruno shook violently. Water exploded across the room. Emma squealed as icy droplets soaked her hair. "Oh," she laughed. "So that's how we're playing today?" Bruno's tail gave the smallest wag. Luca noticed immediately. That tail hadn't moved in over a week. Emma gently massaged medicated shampoo into Bruno's thick fur. Her fingers never rushed, never forced. She quietly hummed an old lullaby. The melody filled the room. Luca recognized none of the words, only the peace it carried. Halfway through the bath, Emma reached for a towel. Her foot slipped. She nearly fell straight into the oversized tub. Instead, she landed sitting on the wet floor. There was complete silence. Then, Emma burst into uncontrollable laughter. Bruno barked once. Then again, his enormous tail thumped happily against the tub. Mrs. Alvarez laughed from the doorway. Even Luca couldn't stop smiling. It happened so naturally he didn't realize it until Emma looked up. She froze. "I'm sorry." She stopped herself. Luca raised one eyebrow. Emma pressed both hands over her mouth. "I almost apologized again." "You almost did." They both smiled. For one fleeting moment, neither employer nor employee existed. Only two lonely adults sharing something wonderfully ordinary. After Bruno's treatment, Emma carefully cleaned the bathing room. She insisted on wiping every surface herself despite Mrs. Alvarez offering help. When everything sparkled again, she quietly headed toward the staff kitchen. She expected to eat alone. Instead, she found Luca pouring coffee. He looked up. "You've been here almost 5 hours." She nodded. "Yes." "Have you eaten?" Emma instinctively lied. "I'm fine." His eyes narrowed slightly. "That wasn't my question." She hesitated. "I forgot lunch." Without another word, he opened a cabinet, removed 2 ceramic mugs, then another cupboard. Fresh bread, cheese, fruit. Within minutes, he prepared simple sandwiches. Emma looked horrified. "You don't have to." "I know." He placed a plate before her. "But I'd like to." She stared. No wealthy employer had ever shared a meal with her. Never. She looked almost afraid to sit. Luca noticed. "You can say no." Emma quietly shook her head. "No." She smiled softly. "I just don't remember the last time someone asked whether I'd eaten." The words landed heavier than either expected. Luca looked away first. He understood loneliness spoken that honestly. They ate quietly, comfortably, not awkwardly. Luca finally asked, "Mrs. Alvarez says you volunteer at an animal shelter." Emma brightened instantly. "It's my favorite place." "Even after working 2 jobs?" She smiled. "Animals don't care how tired you are." He watched her carefully. "You studied veterinary medicine." Emma nearly dropped her cup. "How did you know?" "You held the medicated bottle correctly." She blinked. "You noticed?" "I notice everything." A shadow crossed her face. "I never finished." "You didn't want to?" She looked toward the window. "I wanted to very much." Then softly, "My father needed me more." Silence followed. Not uncomfortable. Respectful. Luca finally nodded. "You chose family." Emma smiled sadly. "I chose love." The words settled deeply inside him. Because once, he had done exactly the same. That evening, Emma finished her shift. She thanked Mrs. Alvarez, patted Bruno gently, collected her worn cleaning bag. As she walked toward the estate gates, she didn't notice Bruno watching from the front window, nor Luca standing several feet behind the curtains. Bruno whimpered. The giant dog slowly placed one paw against the glass. Watching Emma leave, Luca had seen that look before. It was the same expression Bruno wore years earlier. The first time Luca had rescued him. The dog wasn't afraid. He was waiting for someone to come back. Luca looked toward the driveway where Emma disappeared beyond the gates. An unfamiliar thought entered his mind. He found himself hoping she would return tomorrow. Not because Bruno needed her, because somehow the mansion suddenly felt empty again. Have you ever met someone who completely changed your life when you weren't looking for love? Share your story below. The following morning, Bruno refused to eat. Mrs. Alvarez tried everything. Fresh chicken, his favorite biscuits, even the special broth recommended by the veterinarian. The giant Newfoundland merely lay near the front window, staring toward the driveway. Luca frowned. Is the medication making him nauseous? Mrs. Alvarez smiled knowingly. I don't think that's it. What then? I think he's waiting. Luca followed Bruno's gaze. Waiting for what? For someone. Before Luca could respond, the intercom buzzed. The security guard's voice came through. Miss Emma Brooks has arrived. Bruno was on his feet before anyone else moved. His tail began wagging with surprising energy. A deep, joyful bark echoed through the mansion. Luca looked at the dog in disbelief. 20 seconds later, Emma stepped through the front door carrying her worn cleaning bag and a paper sack from a neighborhood bakery. Bruno lumbered toward her as quickly as his recovering body allowed. Oh, sweetheart. Emma knelt. I missed you too. The giant dog gently rested his head in her lap. Mrs. Alvarez folded her arms. I've worked here 23 years, and I've never seen him greet anyone like that. Emma smiled shyly. I think he's just happy someone brought breakfast. She pulled out a homemade dog biscuit shaped like a bone. I asked the shelter veterinarian if I could bake these. Bruno accepted it delicately. Luca watched silently. She hadn't baked it because anyone had asked her to. She had done it because she remembered what made a sick dog smile. That small act unsettled him more than grand gestures ever could. Days slipped quietly into one another. Every morning, Emma arrived just after sunrise. She bathed Bruno with medicated shampoo, speaking to him in soft, reassuring tones. Every afternoon, she brushed his thick coat while reading aloud from old novels she found in the mansion's library. Every evening, Bruno walked farther than he had the day before. The dog was healing. So was the house. Laughter became an unexpected guest. Emma still bumped into furniture. Still apologized when she sneezed too loudly. Still managed to drop something at least once every shift. Yet every mistake somehow ended in laughter instead of embarrassment. One rainy afternoon, she accidentally knocked a watering can off the greenhouse shelf. Water splashed across both her shoes and Luca's polished Italian loafers. Emma froze. Oh no. She looked absolutely horrified. I'm so sore. She stopped herself. Luca raised one eyebrow. Emma bit her lip. I almost said it. You did. I'm improving. Barely. For a heartbeat. Neither moved. Then Luca chuckled. Not politely. Not out of courtesy. It was a real laugh. Deep. Warm. Unexpected. Emma blinked. I didn't know you laughed. I wasn't aware I still could. The words escaped before he could stop them. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable. Honest. One crisp October afternoon, Emma found Luca sitting alone in the estate's rose garden after a difficult board meeting. His suit jacket lay folded beside him. His tie had been loosened. For the first time, he looked less like one of Chicago's most powerful businessmen, and more like a tired man carrying invisible weight. Emma hesitated. I can come back later. You don't have to. She remained standing. I'll only stay a minute. He gestured toward the empty bench beside him. She slowly sat. Neither spoke for several moments. Sometimes silence revealed more than conversation ever could. Finally, Emma looked toward the lake. I've always wondered something. What? How can a place this beautiful feel so lonely? Luca turned toward her. What makes you think it's lonely? She smiled gently. Because beautiful places aren't supposed to echo. His eyes narrowed slightly. You noticed that? I notice animals. She shrugged. And homes. Another pause. My apartment is tiny. She laughed softly. You can hear my neighbors singing every Saturday morning. Poorly. Very poorly. But her smile warmed. It never feels empty. Lucas stared toward the water. My father filled this house with people. She waited. They were all afraid of him. And now they're afraid of me. Emma looked at him quietly. I don't think Bruno is. The answer surprised him. Then she added, and I don't think fear is what your employees feel either. What do you think they feel? They respect you. He gave a faint smile. There's a difference. A very big one. Late Thursday evening. Emma finished work earlier than usual. As always, she stopped by the city animal shelter. She didn't realize another vehicle quietly parked across the street. Luca. He had been driving home when he noticed Emma turning toward the shelter instead of the bus station. Curiosity won. He watched from a respectful distance. Inside, Emma transformed. She knelt beside frightened rescue dogs. She gently cleaned infected paws. She wrapped an old blanket around a trembling puppy rescued from an abandoned warehouse. One elderly German shepherd refused food until Emma sat beside him. Only then did he eat. Nobody applauded. Nobody filmed her. Nobody even seemed surprised. She simply belonged there. Luca eventually stepped inside unnoticed. A volunteer recognized him immediately. Mr. Moretti? He nodded politely. I was passing by. The woman smiled. You know Emma? I employ her temporarily. The volunteer laughed softly. She says she's the lucky one. Luca looked toward Emma. She was humming while bottle-feeding 3 abandoned puppies. How long has she volunteered? Almost 8 years. 8. Never misses a Thursday. Even after working 2 jobs? The volunteer nodded. Sometimes she arrives exhausted. But she always comes. Why? The volunteer looked confused. Because she loves them. No publicity. She smiled. Emma doesn't even let us post her picture online. Luca stood silently. For years, he had donated millions to animal welfare organizations. Yet somehow, the woman wearing faded sneakers had taught him what compassion truly looked like. The following afternoon, Bruno slept peacefully after treatment. Emma organized veterinary supplies inside the bathing room. Luca entered carrying 2 mugs of coffee. I brought enough this time. She smiled. I noticed. They sat near the large window overlooking the gardens. Luca finally asked, if money weren't a problem. Emma laughed. It usually is. But imagine it wasn't. She looked thoughtful. I'd open a rescue clinic. Only for animals? She shook her head. No. I'd build a place where lonely people could volunteer. He frowned. She continued. I've noticed something. What? Broken people heal faster when something else needs them. She smiled. An abandoned dog doesn't care if you're rich, or divorced, or grieving. They simply ask. She looked toward Bruno. Whether you'll stay? Luca remained completely still. Those words struck somewhere deep inside him. Because that was exactly what he had spent his entire life wondering. Who would stay? After learning the truth, not everyone welcomed Emma's growing presence. One evening, Luca hosted a charity dinner attended by investors, politicians, and socialites. Emma had planned to leave before the guests arrived. Mrs. Alvarez stopped her. Could you help Bruno upstairs during dinner? Of course. As Emma carried Bruno's medication through the hallway, she overheard 2 elegantly dressed women speaking near the grand staircase. Who's the maid? I heard she's temporary. Temporary. One woman laughed quietly. Then why does Lucas spend so much time talking to her? The second woman smirked. Men eventually grow bored with charity projects. Emma froze. Her fingers tightened around the medicine tray. She quietly continued walking, pretending she hadn't heard. But every word settled painfully inside her heart. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps she had misunderstood simple kindness. She reminded herself. She cleaned houses. He owned them. Worlds like theirs weren't meant to meet. Later that same evening, an unexpected guest arrived at the estate. Victor Romano, an aging businessman with long-standing ties to the Moretti family's criminal past. His smile never reached his eyes. Luca, it's been too long. Luca's expression hardened instantly. What do you want? Victor glanced around. I hear you've become respectable. I have. What a shame. Emma happened to pass nearby carrying Bruno's blanket. Victor watched her. And who's she? No one who concerns you. Victor chuckled. I've known you 30 years. You only become protective when something matters. Emma lowered her gaze and walked away quickly. She felt Luca's eyes following to ensure she reached the hallway safely. Victor noticed too. He smiled. I see. Luca's voice turned cold. Leave. Victor leaned closer. You can change businesses, but blood never changes. Those words echoed long after Victor disappeared. Emma hadn't heard the full conversation. Only one sentence. Blood never changes. She wondered, what kind of blood haunted Luca Moretti? The next morning, Emma dusted the library shelves while Bruno napped nearby. A framed photograph accidentally slipped from the mantel. She caught it before it hit the floor. Inside the silver frame, a beautiful woman smiled beside a younger Luca. Both wore formal clothing. They looked deeply in love. Emma quietly placed the picture back exactly where it belonged. Just then, Luca entered. His eyes immediately found the photograph. You can ask. Emma hesitated. I shouldn't. You want to know? She nodded softly. Who is she? He looked at the picture for a long moment. Her name was Sophia. Were you married? No. I asked her to marry me. Emma looked down. What happened? Luca's voice became almost inaudible. She learned who my family really was. And, she said, he swallowed. That darkness follows blood. Emma felt her chest tighten. I'm sorry. He gave a faint, weary smile. This time, you don't need to apologize. She smiled sadly. I know. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat. Neither looked away. Both recognized the loneliness in the other. Neither yet realized they had already become each other's safest place. That evening, Emma prepared to leave. As she walked toward the front entrance, she overheard two security guards speaking quietly. Did you hear? Hear what? Romano's back. That's trouble. Anyone close to Mr. Moretti should be careful. Emma slowed her steps. The words lingered. Anyone close to Mr. Moretti should be careful. She looked back once. Through the mansion window, Luca stood beside Bruno, gently stroking the dog's head. He looked peaceful, for the first time in years. Emma smiled, then whispered to herself, I won't become another reason your life gets harder. She walked through the gates with an ache she couldn't explain. Behind her, Bruno watched from the window, and Luca, without understanding why, felt an unfamiliar fear, as though something precious was already beginning to slip away. Have you ever loved someone but felt circumstances were pulling you apart? What happened? Share your experience below. For nearly a week, Emma arrived at the Moretti estate with the same warm smile. She cared for Bruno. She completed every task with quiet excellence. She laughed when Bruno splashed her during his baths. She shared coffee with Mrs. Alvarez. She spoke politely with Luca. To anyone watching, nothing had changed. But Luca noticed the difference immediately. She no longer lingered in the garden. She no longer stayed after Bruno fell asleep. The easy conversations had become carefully measured. The warmth in her eyes was still there. Yet she seemed to be preparing herself to leave. One evening, as she packed away Bruno's medication, Luca finally asked, Did I do something wrong? Emma paused. No. Then why does it feel like you're saying goodbye? She forced a small smile. I'm only temporary. You've been temporary for 3 months. She lowered her eyes. Temporary things eventually end. Without waiting for another question, she quietly walked away. Luca stood alone in the hallway. For the first time in years, a problem couldn't be solved with strategy, money, or influence, because hearts never obeyed business plans. That night, Emma sat beside her apartment window while rain tapped softly against the glass. Rosa arrived carrying takeout containers and immediately knew something was wrong. You've been crying. I'm fine. Emma, you know I hate that sentence. Emma looked away. I think I've fallen in love. Rosa smiled. I've been waiting for you to admit it. Emma blinked. You knew? Everyone knows. I certainly didn't. You looked happier these last 3 months than I've seen you in 7 years. Emma sighed. It doesn't matter. Why not? Because people like Luca don't build lives with women like me. Rosa leaned forward. Who told you that? The world. No. Rosa shook her head. People did. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I overheard women at his charity dinner. So, they were right. They don't know him. They know his world. Emma clasped her hands tightly. I've worked too hard rebuilding my heart. I can't survive loving someone who will eventually realize I'm not enough. Rosa reached across the table. Emma, you're making his decision for him. Across the city, Luca wasn't sleeping either. Victor Romano's visit had stirred old enemies from hiding. Reports arrived daily. Suspicious vehicles, threatening messages, financial sabotage. Nothing serious yet. But Luca recognized the pattern. Someone wanted to remind him. The Moretti name would never escape its past. His chief of security entered the study. We've increased patrols. Good. There is one concern. Luca looked up. Miss Brooks. His expression immediately changed. What about her? If Romano believes she matters to you. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Luca understood perfectly. For years, he had kept emotional distance from everyone. Not because he feared being hurt, because anyone close to him could become a target. And now, without realizing it, Emma had become the one person capable of breaking him. The following morning, Emma requested a private meeting with Mrs. Alvarez. I'd like to end my assignment. Mrs. Alvarez looked genuinely shocked. Why? I've been offered more permanent housekeeping work closer to home. It was only half true. There are no problems here. No. Emma smiled sadly. Everyone has been wonderful. Especially Bruno. Emma's voice almost broke. He deserves someone who won't leave eventually. Mrs. Alvarez understood more than Emma realized. Have you told Luca? Emma quietly shook her head. I think it's better this way. She handed over an envelope. Could you give him this after I'm gone? Mrs. Alvarez looked at the letter, then at Emma. She didn't argue. Some lessons. People had to learn themselves. Emma decided to finish one last medicated bath. She brushed Bruno carefully, dried his coat, placed both hands against his massive face. You've become so handsome again. Bruno wagged happily. Then, as if sensing something, his tail stopped. Emma hugged him tightly. I wish I could explain. The giant dog gently licked the tears from her cheek. She laughed through her crying. You've always been better with feelings than people. From the hallway, Luca watched unnoticed. He had never seen Bruno behave that way. Animals always sensed the truth before humans did. Emma picked up her worn cleaning bag. She walked toward the front entrance. Mrs. Alvarez hugged her tightly. You'll always have family here. Emma whispered. Thank you. She stepped outside. The October wind carried fallen leaves across the driveway. Behind her, the mansion door slowly closed. Inside, Mrs. Alvarez immediately walked toward Luca's study. Without saying a word, she handed him the envelope. He frowned. What is this? Read it. He unfolded the paper. Her handwriting was neat, careful, almost painfully restrained. Dear Luca, thank you for reminding me that kindness still exists. Thank you for trusting me with Bruno. He healed far more than he knows. Please don't think I left because of anything you did. You gave me some of the happiest weeks I've had in many years. But people like me don't belong in worlds like yours. I won't become another burden your past has to carry. Please take care of Bruno. And take care of your own heart too. You once told me I apologized too much. So this time, I won't apologize for loving you. Emma. Luca stopped breathing. The room became completely silent. Mrs. Alvarez quietly said, She's already gone. Luca ran. Not walked. Ran. Security guards stared in disbelief as their employers sprinted through the mansion. He reached the front gates, the driveway, the road beyond, just in time to see a yellow taxi disappear into Chicago traffic. He stood frozen, exactly like the moment we witnessed at the beginning of this story. The feared Mafia boss, helpless, unable to chase the woman who had quietly become his home. Behind him, Bruno began howling. The heartbreaking sound echoed across Lake Michigan. Luca slowly looked down. Something white rested beneath Bruno's favorite blanket on the back seat of the SUV. Another folded note. He opened it. Only 5 words appeared. "You taught me love again." Those words shattered every wall remaining around his heart. "No," he whispered to himself. "Not this time." The next morning, Luca canceled every meeting, every negotiation, every board presentation. His executives panicked. Investors called nonstop. None of it mattered. He drove to Emma's apartment. She wasn't home. He went to the staffing agency. They can't release employee information. He donated enough money to renovate the agency's employee assistance program. The manager smiled apologetically. "I'm still not allowed." He laughed despite himself. "Fair enough." Mrs. Alvarez suddenly called. "I know where she'll be tonight." "Where?" "The shelter." Rain had begun falling as evening settled over Chicago. Inside the rescue shelter, Emma quietly bathed an elderly Labrador rescued only hours earlier. She smiled gently despite her swollen eyes. "You'll be safe now." The shelter door opened. Cold wind rushed inside. Emma looked up. Lucas stood there, completely soaked. No umbrella, no bodyguards, no expensive overcoat. Only a man whose heart had finally caught up with his courage. Neither spoke. The room fell silent. Even the volunteers quietly stepped away. Lucas slowly approached. "I've negotiated billion-dollar contracts." Emma's eyes shimmered with tears. "I've faced armed men." Another step. "I've buried people I loved." He stopped only inches away. "But chasing you," he laughed softly through emotion, "is the hardest thing I've ever done." Emma whispered, "You shouldn't be here. I've never been more certain of where I belong." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You deserve someone from your world." He gently shook his head. "My world." He looked around the shelter. Dogs barked happily. Volunteers cleaned kennels. Emma stood surrounded by creatures she loved. "This," he whispered, "is the first place that has ever felt like home." Emma searched his eyes. "What about your past?" "My past belongs behind me." "What if people come after you?" "They already have." "I don't want to become another person you lose." He stepped closer. "I've spent 10 years protecting everyone except myself." His voice trembled. "And then you walked into my house. Apologized to an umbrella stand." Emma laughed through tears. "And somehow convinced Bruno." "And me?" "That trust is still possible." She covered her mouth. "I love you." "I know." He smiled warmly. "Because I love you too." No conditions. No titles. No social class. No family names. Just you. Emma finally allowed herself to cry openly. "I was so afraid." "So was I." He gently reached for her hand. "Let's be afraid together." She nodded. Together. Several weeks later, Luca invited Emma back to the estate. Not as an employee, as the woman he loved. Bruno greeted her by nearly knocking her off her feet with excitement. Mrs. Alvarez laughed until tears filled her eyes. The entire household watched from a respectful distance. Luca led Emma toward the rose garden where they had once shared quiet conversations. In the center stood an easel covered with white cloth. He pulled it away. Instead of a luxury gift, it revealed architectural drawings. Emma stared in disbelief. Across the top were the words, "The Brooks and Moretti Rescue and Healing Center." Her hands began trembling. The plans showed a state-of-the-art animal rescue hospital, adoption facilities, community veterinary clinics, therapy programs pairing rescued animals with grieving families, veterans, lonely seniors, and children, classrooms where future veterinary students could receive scholarships. Emma whispered, "This was my dream." Lucas smiled. "No." He gently took both her hands. "It will be our purpose." Then, he knelt on one knee. Not before cameras. Not before investors. Only before the woman who had healed 2 wounded souls. Bruno gently placed one enormous paw on Lucas' shoulder, as if giving his approval. Everyone laughed through tears. Luca looked up. Emma Brooks, you once believed dreams died because life became difficult. I want to spend every remaining year proving they sometimes only wait for the right person. Will you marry me? Emma could barely breathe. Yes. She laughed. She cried. She nodded over and over. Yes. Bruno barked so loudly that birds scattered from nearby trees. Mrs. Alvarez wiped away tears. Even the security guards quietly applauded. Months later, the mansion no longer echoed. Laughter filled its halls. Fresh dog toys covered the living room. Bruno, now completely healthy, proudly greeted every rescued animal temporarily staying before adoption. Emma often walked through the estate wearing comfortable clothes instead of a housekeeping uniform. She no longer carried a worn cleaning bag. Instead, she carried veterinary charts. Dreams that had once been buried beneath hospital bills had finally found sunlight again. As for Luca, the feared Mafia boss had discovered that true strength had never come from power. It came from vulnerability, from choosing love despite fear, from refusing to let the right woman walk away. The same man who once believed darkness defined his future now woke each morning beside the woman who had quietly taught him that healing always begins with trust. And every evening, as the sun disappeared over Lake Michigan, three figures could often be seen walking together through the gardens. A once feared man, a once forgotten maid, and the faithful dog who had recognized true love long before either of them did. What do you think is the most important ingredient for lasting love? Trust, loyalty, communication, or forgiveness? Tell me below. Spring arrived in Chicago wrapped in sunshine. The city still glittered with towering skyscrapers and luxury penthouses. Business deals were still signed before breakfast. Fortunes were still made overnight. But on the northern edge of the city, overlooking a peaceful stretch of Lake Michigan, another kind of miracle had quietly taken root. The elegant bronze sign at the entrance read, "The Brooks and Moretti Rescue and Healing Center." Beneath it, a smaller plaque carried a simple sentence, "Every wounded heart deserves another chance." Those words had become more than a mission statement. They had become the story of everyone who walked through the doors. Emma Brooks never returned to veterinary school. She didn't need to. With Luca's support, experienced veterinarians, professors, and nonprofit partners helped her complete the certifications required to oversee animal rehabilitation programs, while funding scholarships for aspiring veterinarians from low-income families. The woman who once believed her dream had died now spent every morning doing exactly what she had imagined as a young student. Only, it had grown into something even bigger. The center rescued abused and abandoned animals from across Illinois. Families struggling financially received free veterinary care. Children visited every weekend to read stories to shy rescue dogs. Military veterans coping with trauma found healing by training service animals. Widows who believed loneliness would last forever discovered companionship through adoption programs. Teenagers ordered by courts to complete community service often left asking if they could volunteer permanently. Emma knew why. Healing was contagious. Kindness had a way of multiplying itself. She smiled every time she remembered something she had once told Luca. Broken people heal faster when something else needs them. Now she watched it happen every single day. Luca Moretti still ran his companies. His businesses continued creating thousands of jobs across Chicago. But his priorities had changed forever. The newspapers no longer called him the mysterious billionaire. Instead, they often described him as one of the city's most generous philanthropists. Few reporters understood the real reason. Money had never changed Luca. Love had. He had finally stopped spending his life proving he wasn't his father. Instead, he spent it becoming the kind of man his younger brother would have been proud to call family. The last remnants of the old criminal empire had quietly disappeared. Victor Romano and the remaining figures from the past eventually faced justice after years of investigations supported by evidence Luca had secretly preserved. For the first time since childhood, The Moretti name no longer belonged to darkness. It belonged to redemption. Bruno had become something of a local celebrity. Children loved the enormous Newfoundland who greeted every visitor with slow, happy tail wags. New rescue dogs instinctively relaxed around him. The veterinarians joked that Bruno seemed to understand exactly which frightened animals needed reassurance. Emma often laughed. He remembers. Luca would smile. So do I. One rainy afternoon, a tiny mixed-breed puppy rescued from severe neglect refused to leave the corner of a kennel. No volunteer could get close. Emma quietly opened the gate. Before she could kneel, Bruno walked inside. The giant dog simply laid down beside the trembling puppy. He didn't force interaction. He didn't bark. He simply stayed. An hour later, the puppy crawled against Bruno's warm side and fell asleep. Emma wiped away quiet tears. Some healers never needed words. One autumn morning, the rescue center hosted its annual adoption celebration. Hundreds of families filled the gardens. Children chased bubbles across the lawn. Volunteers laughed while serving homemade food. Music drifted gently through the air. Mrs. Alvarez stood near the entrance greeting guests like a proud grandmother. Rosa coordinated volunteer registration with her usual energy. Margaret Brooks, now healthier than anyone had expected after improved medical care and regular visits from her daughter, sat beneath a maple tree, smiling as children introduced her to newly adopted puppies. Luca looked around the celebration. This feels different. Emma slipped her hand into his. It is. What is it? She rested her head against his shoulder. It's home. Not the mansion. Not the lake. Not even the rescue center itself. Home had become the people they loved. Life, however, wasn't finished giving them gifts. Several months after the adoption festival, Emma walked into Luca's office carrying a small envelope. He looked up from a stack of contracts. Everything okay? She nodded, though her smile trembled. I have something to show you. She handed him the envelope. Inside was a sonogram. For several seconds, Luca simply stared, then looked at Emma, then back at the image. His voice barely worked. Really? Emma laughed through tears. Really? He slowly stood. The feared businessman who had negotiated billion-dollar mergers. The man once called untouchable, suddenly found himself crying without shame. He wrapped Emma in his arms. I thought life had already given me everything. She smiled. It wasn't finished. 9 months later, a beautiful baby girl entered the world. They named her Grace. Not because life had always been graceful, but because Grace had found them when they least deserved to expect it. Bruno appointed himself her personal guardian from the very first day. He slept beside her crib every night. The nurses quickly stopped trying to move him. On a crisp October afternoon, exactly 3 years after Emma first stepped nervously through the Moretti estate gates, the family visited the mansion gardens. Many things had changed. The grand halls no longer echoed with silence. Children's laughter drifted through open windows. Dog beds occupied nearly every room. Fresh flowers decorated every hallway, not because a designer insisted on them, but because Emma loved bringing pieces of the rescue center home. Grace toddled across the lawn with Bruno walking patiently beside her. Emma laughed as their daughter stumbled into a pile of colorful autumn leaves. Luca wrapped an arm around his wife. Do you remember your first day here? Emma groaned playfully. I apologized to an umbrella stand. You certainly did. And spilled towels. You did. And nearly fell into Bruno's bath. He smiled warmly. You also brought life back into this house. Emma looked at him with the same tenderness that had first begun in the bathing room. No. She gently squeezed his hand. We brought life back together. That evening, as the sun disappeared beyond Lake Michigan, Emma sat on the porch watching Grace giggle while Bruno patiently carried a tennis ball almost as large as she was. Luca joined her with 2 mugs of coffee, just like those quiet afternoons when their friendship first began. He handed her one. She smiled. You still remember exactly how I like it. I always will. Silence settled between them. Comfortable. peaceful, complete. Finally, Emma whispered, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if Bruno hadn't become sick?" Luca looked toward the faithful Newfoundland. "I think about it often." And he smiled. "I've decided Bruno wasn't the one who needed rescuing." Emma looked at him curiously. He kissed her forehead. "I was. Sometimes the greatest love stories don't begin with grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes they begin with spilled towels, a clumsy smile, a wounded dog, and two lonely hearts brave enough to trust again." Emma believed her dreams had been buried beneath sacrifice. Luca believed his family name had sentenced him to a lifetime of loneliness. Both were wrong, because love has an extraordinary way of finding us when we've stopped searching. It reminds us that our past does not define our future, that broken hearts can heal, that second chances are real, and that the right person doesn't simply change your life. They help you become the person you were always meant to be. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late to begin again, remember Emma and Luca. Hope often arrives quietly. Sometimes, it walks in on 4 gentle paws. If this romance touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable love stories filled with passion, healing, redemption, and second chances. Every week, we bring you cinematic romance journeys designed to make you laugh, cry, hope, and believe in love again. Thank you for spending this beautiful journey with us. We can't wait to see you in the next timeless romance story. What was your favorite moment in this story? And do you believe soulmates truly exist? Let me know in the comments below.